Welcome back to the second chapter of our subject, that is botany. So we were discussing about biological classification, that is how the organisms have been classified according to their criteria, according to their characteristic features, and they have been classified according to their kingdoms, that is two kingdom classification. We have studied about the history of kingdom classification, that is how did they classify kingdoms according to their characteristic features, and the role of various other scientists, and what are the characteristic features and what are the important subjects they have been implemented while characterizing or featuring these kingdom classification. So now the very first classification was the kingdom Monera. So now we are going to study about the kingdom Protista, the second kingdom of five kingdom classification, that is kingdom Protista. So in this, organisms consists of a single celled cells, that is in Protista the organisms are usually single celled with several flagella. Flagella are the filament like substances which are useful in movement of the organism. Okay, these flagella are useful in movement for the organism. Similar to the bacterium, it is also consists of a prokaryotic cell, and it also has a nucleus. That is, nucleus is also present in the prokaryotic cell. I'll repeat once again. It is a prokaryote such as bacterium. Actually, it's larger than the prokaryotic cell, and it also has a nucleus. Okay. Therefore, the organisms of this domain belong to the category called as eukarya. Okay, these organisms belong to the category called as eukarya, the domain that includes human beings. That is, eukarya is a domain which also includes human beings, but this particular eukaryote is one of the smallest and simplest organisms in the domain, which is called as protists. Okay, its scientific name is Giardia lamblia. I'll spell it Giardia, Giardia, Lamblia, Giardia lamblia. As a human parasite, it can also make us sick. That is, these protists are very harmful in nature and they can make us sick. Okay, and so in the slide you can see, in the very first slide you can see there is a diagram of Protista. In that diagram you can see the labeling, which include pellicle. Pellicle is nothing but the outer layer, okay, the innermost layer or the outermost layer of the protist. And nucleus, you can see the nucleus, chloroplast, flagellum, contractile vacuole, and a eye spot. That eye spot will be represented as the characteristic feature of the protists. Okay, so in the what are the main characteristic features, or you can say what is included in the kingdom Protista. Protists are the group of all eukaryotes that are not fungi, animals, or nor plants. As a result, it is very diverse group of organisms. The eukaryotes that make up this kingdom, that is kingdom Protista, do not have much in common besides a relatively simple organization. Protists can look very different from each other. Some are tiny and unicellular like an amoeba, and some are large and multicellular like seaweed. Okay, some organisms are very small like amoeba, you know amoeba, right? And some are very large like seaweeds. However, multicellular protists do not have highly specialized tissues or organs. They don't have much though they have multicellular organisms, but they don't have highly specialized tissues or organs. Okay, this simple cellular level is basically called as the main characteristic feature of the kingdom kingdom Protista. Okay, and one more important point is multicellular protists do not have, that's what I told you, multicellular protists do not have specialized tissues or organs. They are thought to be between 60,000 to 200,000 protist species and may have yet to be identified. Okay, and the simple cellular level organization distinguish between protists from other eukaryotes such as fungi, animals, and plants. Protists live in almost any environment that contain liquid water. Many protists such as algae, are photosynthetic and are vital primary producers in ecosystem. That is, they are the primary producers of human beings and are responsible. Other protists are responsible for a range of serious human diseases such as malaria and sleeping sickness. Some protists are useful to human beings as they produce, as they are the producers in the ecosystem, and some also cause the diseases such as Plasmodium vivax or Plasmodium falciparum. These are the organisms which are responsible for causing malaria and some other sleeping sickness. Some are bacteria, which some protists are very harmful in harmful to the human mankind. The term protist was first used by Ernest Haeckel in 1866. Protists were traditionally placed into one of the several groups based on similarities to a plant, animal, or a fungus. The animal like protozoa, the plant like protophyta, that is mostly look like algae, and the fungus like called as slime moths and water moths. These traditional subdivisions, which were largely based on non-scientific characteristics, have been replaced by classification based on phylogenetics. Phylogenetics is nothing but evolutionary relatedness among organisms. However, the older terms are still used as informal names to describe the general characteristic features of various protists. So all these protists are being classified depending upon their look-alike nature. That is, some organisms looks like plants, some are looking like animals, some looks like fungus. So based on these characteristic features, organisms have been divided. Okay. So in the very first slide, you can see in the kingdom Protista, organisms usually of single celled are included, and some are autotrophic and heterotrophic. That is, some can prepare their own food and some organisms depend upon other organisms for their food purpose. Members of Protista are primarily aquatic, that is, usually they are present in water animals, and some have flagella or cilia that which helps in the movement of these organisms. You can see the types of protists which we will be furtherly studying in that topic, okay, such as slime moths, amoeba, euglena, dinoflagellate, paramecium, diatoms, and macromegaly. So all these organisms are being, we'll be discussing about all these in detail. So in our next slide, you can see the characteristic features of kingdom Protista. So these are usually eukaryotic organisms, which includes membrane-bound nucleus. That is, in the Monera kingdom, we didn't see any membrane-bound nucleus, which is, that is nothing but nuclear membrane was absent. But here in kingdom Protista, the nuclear membrane is present. Okay. Usually they are aquatic in nature. That is nothing but all the protist organisms basically live in moist conditions. That is, wherever the water is present. Okay. Most species are unicellular, but some organisms are also multicellular, such as kelp. Example of multicellular is kelp. Some species of kelp grow so large that they exceed even 100 feet in height. That is called as giant kelp. Just like any other eukaryote, the cells of these species have a nucleus and membrane-bound cell organelles. That is, in earlier Monera, kingdom Monera, the membrane-bound cell organelles were absent, but in this Protista, the membrane-bound cell organelles are present. Okay, and they are autotrophic, heterotrophic. Just now I told you, autotrophic, which can prepare their own food; heterotrophic, which depends upon, depends upon other organisms for their survival. Okay, so and some other points, some other characteristic features also include symbiosis is observed in the members of this class. That is, for example, kelp, which is a seaweed. Kelp, which is a seaweed, is a multicellular protist that provides protection from predators amidst its thick kelp. Just because of its thick body structure, kelp is nothing provides the protection from other organisms. Okay. In turn, the otters eat sea urchins that tend to feed on kelp. Okay. So that it is nothing but a symbiotic nature. There are two organisms known as otters, OTTERS, otters and kelp. A kelp, what it does, it helps, it provides protection to the otters. In return, the otters will eat up all the invaders, or the enemies of kelp, which does not allow the kelp to grow in the water. Okay. Parasitism is also observed in protists. Species such as Trypanosoma protozoa can cause sleeping sickness in human beings. Some organisms called as trypanosoma, which is nothing but a protozoa, causes a sleeping sickness in human beings. Protists exhibit locomotion through cilia and flagella. A few organisms belonging to kingdom protists have pseudopodia, which help them to move. Pseudopodia are nothing but, you can see in the amoeba, pseudopodia, false feet are called as pseudopodia. Protista reproduces by asexual means. The sexual method of reproduction is extremely rare and occurs only during times of stress. Usually it reproduces by asexual reproduction. Okay. So classification of Protista. We'll be discussing about the next slide, that is classification of Protista. Protista are classified in the 5 subdivisions, that is chrysophytes, dinoflagellates, euglenoids, slime moulds and protozoans. Okay. One more, I'll tell you once again. Classification of Protista, it is divided into chrysophytes, dinoflagellates, euglenoids, slime molds and protozoans. Here you can see they are classified according to the animal-like, plant-like and fungus-like structures. In animal-like, which, like for example, which take the food from the environment. Like usually what animals do, they take the food, whatever they require food, they are taking the food from the environmental solutions. Okay. So the substances or the organisms which depend for food on the environmental purpose are called as animal-like, which take food from the environment, whereas plant-like, which can produce the food on their own, that is autotrophic by photosynthetic process, and fungus-like, fungus-like are again divided into 2 types, that is which include decomposers and parasites, and others are which depend upon external digestion. Okay. So there are various, depending upon these characteristic features, the protists are divided into various other categories. So in the next slide you can see with the examples, that is plant-like protists. Members of this kingdom are grouped together because they don't fit into other kingdoms. Okay. So plant-like protists are nothing but algae, which are nothing but photosynthetic autotrophs. In that further, it is again divided into unicellular and multicellular. Unicellular, single-celled organisms, multicellular organisms. In unicellular, you have euglena, diatoms and dinoflagellates. In multicellular, you have Euvolva, kelp and Irish moss. These are the organisms which comes under the category of algae. That is nothing but they can prepare their own food, which are, then what are they called? Autotrophic organisms. Then coming to animal-like protists or animal-like protists, which are called as protozoa. Example, heterotrophs. Examples are amoeba, paramecium, trypanosome and plasmodium. Plasmodium, we are all aware of it, which is the organism which causes malaria. Okay. Amoeba is a single-celled organism which contains pseudopodia. Okay. And paramecia is a slipper-like organism which has cilia and cilia all towards its body structure. Okay. So next coming to fungus-like protists, which are heterotrophs again, that is they depend for the food on other organisms. Examples are slime molds and water molds. So these are the various types of organisms which based on their characteristic feature, based on their nutrition, based on their mode of nutrition, based on their type, how do they survive, I mean how do they take up the food from the environment, based on these characteristic features, animals are divided or organisms are divided into different categories. So these are algae, protozoa and fungus-like protists. Algae are photosynthetic, that is they can prepare their own food, whereas protozoa and fungus-like protists are heterotrophic in nature. Okay. So in the next slide we will be studying about each organism, that is first will be the chrysophytes. So coming to chrysophytes, which is also known as golden algae. Okay. Chrysophytes, which is also known as chrysophytes are a group of algae commonly found in lakes. These chrysophytes are usually found in lakes, are common microscopic chromis in fresh water. They are usually found in fresh water. Some species are colorless, but the vast majority are photosynthetic in nature. As such, they are particularly important in lakes where they may be primary source of food for zooplankton. They are the primary source for the food for many various other organisms like zooplankton. They are not considered truly autotrophic by some biologists because nearly all chrysophytes become facultatively heterotrophic in the absence of adequate light or in the presence of plentiful dissolved food. For example, if you have got much food, Do you go and cook again? No, you don't cook it again. So similarly, these organisms also, depending upon the conditions, that is depending upon the favorable or unfavorable conditions, they also become facultative heterotrophic in nature. When this occurs, the chrysophytes atrophies and the algae may turn predators, feeding on bacteria or diatoms. There are more than thousands described species of chrysophytes. Most of them are free swimming and unicellular, but there are filamentous and colonial forms also. Other chrysophytes may spend part of their life as amoeboid cells. At the left and center of their lake systems, usually these organisms are found. The colonies grow as branched or unbranched chains. A spherical colonial form, that is Cyanuria, is on the center of the chrysophyte region. Okay, I'll show you its. See in the diagram, that is, you can see the plasmid DNA molecule, chromosomal DNA molecule, ribosomes, fimbriae, that is small external appendages, cytoplasm, flagella, which is helpful in movement of organism from one place to other place, the capsule, cell wall, plasma membrane, which is surrounding the cell wall. So all these are the characteristic features of the chrysophytes. Okay, so coming to its species, we'll talk about the different types of chrysophytes. You have chrysophytes are again divided into two types, that is diatoms and desmids. Diatoms are very important organisms, that is they occur in aquatic and most terrestrial habitats. Most of them are aquatic in nature and some are terrestrial, that is land forms. Usually diatoms are present on the floating bodies of the water, that is they are usually found on the floating surface of the water, and they usually show the gliding movement with the help of mucilage. Diatoms are always covered with a thin layer of mucilage, that is some slippery substance. So they are a type of gliding move. They show a type of gliding movement with the help of that mucilage which is covered on its body. The body is covered by a transparent siliceous shell, that is which is made up of silica, which is known as frustule. The body of the diatom is covered with a silica or siliceous cell, which is called as frustule. Depending upon the symmetry, the diatoms are two types, that is pinnate and centric. Chloroplasts or chromatophores are yellowish brown to greenish brown. They contain chlorophyll A and chlorophyll C in their pigmentations. Okay, and diatoms contain fucoxanthins that provides brownish tint. That is nothing but these are also called as brown algae. Why? Because they contain a pigment called as fucoxanthin, which gives them that color called as brownish tint. So that's why they are also called as brownish algae. Examples of diatoms include Triceratium, Purosigma, Navicula, Cimbella, Amphipleura. All these are examples of diatoms. So in the next slide, you can see about desmids, that is, which are also called as golden algae. Desmids are unicellular, that is green in color, and they are usually look alike Spirogyra, which are elaborate chloroplasts. Spirogyra is nothing but the organisms which have more amount of chloroplast in their nature, and they also have two distinct layers in their cell wall. Okay, the cell wall contains two distinct layers. The outer wall of the cell has various prototuberances covered with mucilaginous sheath, which is thought to play an important role in gliding movement. That's why I told you the characteristic feature of the chrysophytes is gliding movement. Sexual reproduction is usually done by conjugation. Conjugation, I told you yesterday about in the bacteria. That is, one cell, the recipient and the donor come together. Plasmid layer is formed in between. The DNA material from the recipient cell is sent to the donor cell. Okay, from the donor cell it is sent to the recipient cell. They are mainly found in fresh water and usually indication of unpolluted water. That is, they usually found in fresh water and are usually indication of clean and unpolluted water. That is, these organisms are not found in polluted waters. They are usually found in unpolluted water. So wherever their golden algae is present, so you can say that that water is purely unpolluted. That is, it is a fresh water lake. Okay, so in the diagram you can see the picture of desmid. So these are the main characteristic features of chrysophytes. That is, how do they, what is the difference between the diatoms and desmids. These are also usually found in moist and very aquatic conditions and free floating conditions. Main characteristic feature is mucilage, that is, they have gliding movement upon their nature. Okay. So in the next slide, we can see about dinoflagellate. That is the second category of protists. Dinoflagellates are nothing but any of the numerous single-celled aquatic organisms bearing two dissimilar flagella and having characteristics of both plants and animals. These organisms are having dissimilar flagella and have both characteristic features of plants and animals. Most of them are marine, though some live in freshwater habitats. The group is this group is an important component of phytoplankton in all but the colder seas and is an important link in the food chain. This is very important component of phytoplankton in all but the colder seas and is the important link in the food chain. Dinoflagellates also produce some of the bioluminescence sometimes seen in the sea. That is nothing but the organisms which burn itself to produce some amount of light. We call it as jugnu, the kind of light producing organisms. Okay, some light producing organisms. So these are nothing but these dinoflagellates which you can see in the night time when you go in the night time when you go near the lakes or big oceans. So you can see some kind of light emitting organisms are present. Those organisms are nothing but these dinoflagellates. Okay. So under certain conditions, several species can reproduce rapidly to form water blooms or red tides that discolor the water and may poison fish and other animals. Some dinoflagellates produce toxins that are among the most poisonous known. Some organisms, for example, in certain conditions, what happens? These organisms can reproduce in a huge number, which results in poisoning the fish or poisoning the water, which causes a blockage kind of thing over the sea or the river, which does not allow the passage of air or oxygen through the atmosphere into the sea, which results in ultimately poisoning of the sea. Okay. And next important point is, what are the characteristic features of this dinoflagellates? In the next slide, you can see characteristic features of dinoflagellates. They are planktonic. That is nothing but 90% of all dinoflagellates are marine plankton, that is, lives in marine waters. Others are benthetic, symbiotic and parasitic. Usually all the organisms are planktons, but some are benthic, symbiotic or parasitic in nature. They are very small organisms, although many of them are microscopic and range from about 15 to 20 microns in size. The largest of all is around 2 micrometer in diameter. The name of that organism which is the largest is called as Noctiluca. I'll repeat, Noctiluca is the largest of all these dinoflagellate. Okay, and they are motile, that is, they can move from one place to other place. That is, dinoflagellates swim by means of two flagella, movable protein and microtubule strands that propel the cell through the water. The longitudinal flagellum extends out from the sulcal groove of the hypotheca. When it whips back and forth, that is, when it whips back and forth, it propels the cell to move forward. The flattened transverse flagellum lies in the cingulum, the groove that extends around the equator of the cell. Its motion provides maneuvering and forward movement. As a result of the action of the two flagella, the cell spirals as it moves. And one more important point is, many of these organisms are thecate, that is, the body surface is very bulged kind of thing, having an internal skeletal of cellulose-like plates. The cortical, that is, outer part of the cell contains flattened vesicles known as alveoli. In some species, polysaccharides deposited in the vesicles form rigid plates called as thecae. And some organisms does not contain these thecae. Those organisms are called as naked cells lack thecae. Some organisms does not contain thecae, which called as naked cells. Okay. So, and some organisms also have, these organisms are also contains chromosomes which are always condensed. Nothing but dinoflagellates DNA always exists in the crystalline form in the nucleus. Unlike other eukaryotes, in addition, these organisms lack proteins called as histones that in other eukaryotic cells helps in organization of the chromosomes. Dinoflagellates contain a lot of DNA, which explains the large size of the nucleus. Of course, they have got the largest size of nucleus because of the presence of more amount of DNA in them. The metabolic requirements of supporting the large amount of DNA may explain the low growth rates of dinoflagellates compared to other unicellular protists. Not all dinoflagellates are photosynthetic in nature. That is nothing but one more characteristic feature is all the dinoflagellates are not photosynthetic. Why? Many dinoflagellates are photosynthetic, manufacturing their own food using the energy from sunlight and providing a food source for other organisms. The photosynthetic dinoflagellates are important primary producers in coastal waters. Some photosynthetic dinoflagellates are symbiotic, that is living in the cells of their host cell, such as corals. You know corals, right? Some sea animals, and which are also called as zooxanthellae. They are found in many marine invertebrates, including sponges, corals, jellyfish, and flatworms, as well as within protists, such as ciliates, foraminiferans, and colonial radiolarians. These are the organisms in which these dinoflagellates lives as a symbiotic organism. Approximately half of all the species are heterotrophic in nature, eating other planktons and sometimes each other by snaring or stinging their prey. Sometimes they always eat their own organisms as they are heterotrophic in nature. Okay. Non-photosynthetic species of dinoflagellates feed on diatoms or other protists. For example, Noctiluca is large enough to eat zooplankton and fish eggs. Some species are parasites on algae, zooplankton, fish, or other organisms. These are, not all the dinoflagellates are photosynthetic nature. Some some are heterotrophic, which eat their own protists or some other zooplanktons, fish eggs, or many other organisms. Okay. And one more next point is dinoflagellates usually reproduce asexually. That is, the most form of reproduction is asexual, where daughter cells form by simple mitosis and division of the cell. The daughter cells will be genetically identical to that of the parent cell, that is the original parent cell. The thecal plates may either be divided or completely shed and then reformed. In some dinoflagellates, the life cycle may involve sexual reproduction, in which cells fuse to form a zygote. Two cells fuse to form a zygote, which is also called as planozygote. If it remains a swimming cell or it becomes a cyst, which is called as dormant life stage, that sinks to the sediment of the later, which results in the germination of the dinoflagellate. So, coming to the next slide, you can see red tides. Just now I told you that what happens when why do we call it as a red tide? Because when the dinoflagellate reproduce in the huge number during unfavorable conditions, dinoflagellates reproduce in the huge number, which makes the sea color the color of the sea to discolor in nature. That is, it makes as a red in nature. So this color is, this reproduction or this enlargement of species is called as red tides. This bloom may be caused by the nutrient and hydrographic conditions, although the environmental conditions which result in red tides are not completely understood. For dinoflagellate red tides, the water is discolored red or brown due to as high 20 million cells per liter. These red tides are composed primarily of one species of dinoflagellate that has been rapidly growing and accumulating. Due to the accumulation of all these dinoflagellates, these red tides will be growing. Red tides are conditions when a dinoflagellate population increases to huge number, which discolors the water. Okay, and some red tides are also luminescent. Most in southern California create dramatic nighttime displays of bioluminescence in the wakes breaking on the beach. A synopsis of the putative mechanisms responsible for these red tides is kindly proved by the late Professor Wolfgang Berger, a geologist at Scripps Oceanography. You can see in some movies we can see that dark night near the seas, some kind of white color shiny organisms are being glowing. Some light will be glowing. Those lights are nothing but dinoflagellates, which emit kind of bioluminescence from their body organisms. Okay, so you can see in the next slide the diagram of dinoflagellate, which consists of cyst location, apex, starch inclusions, oil inclusions, cingulum, transverse undipodium, that is nucleus, sulcus, flagellum, and chromatophores. So, in the next slide, we'll be studying about slime molds. That is, slime molds are usually saprophytic organisms. They feed on the dead and decaying matter. These are the tiniest organisms that have many nuclei in nature. Slime molds are characteristic features of the plasmodium. You can basic example of slime molds, you can see plasmodium, which is visible to our naked eye. Usually the other organisms, up till now, whatever we have studied, these are not visible to your naked eye. That is, they are usually microscopic in nature. But these slime balls are the organisms which are visible to our naked eye. So in the next slide, we can see about the characteristic features of the slime balls, which include they lack chlorophyll. Ultimately, because they are saprophytic in nature, that is, they depend upon other organisms. So ultimately, they don't have any own pigmentation. That is, they are not autotrophic in nature. So which means they does not have any chlorophyll. They are surrounded by the plasma membrane only. That is, vegetative phase cell lacks cell wall. However, the spores have the cellulose cell walls. At one stage of the life cycle, they are amoeboid structure. That is, vegetative body is plasmodial in nature. The slime balls live usually amongst decaying vegetation. They commonly occur in lawns and moist fields. They exhibit wide range of coloration. That is, they can change the color from one color to the other color. They are usually saprophytes and phagotrophic mode of nutrition. Both asexual and sexual modes of reproduction are present. They produce spores with sporangia. A spore possesses a cell wall of cellulose. The slime balls resemble both protozoa and true fungi. They are like protozoa in their amoeboidal plasmodial stage and similar to true fungi in the abundant spore stage. They are kind of a two-stage, you can say, jumping from one generation to the other. Initially, they are like amoeboid plasmodial stage. Later on, they will be turned into fungus, like abundant spore formation stage. In a spore formation phase, they will be turned into fungus stage. Okay. So in the next slide, you can see the before going to the next slide, we'll study about all the economic importance of the slime balls. That is, slime balls also cause the decay and decomposition of the organic matter in the soil. The main important economic importance of slime ball is they can cause the decay and decomposition of the organic matter in the soil. They creep over the ornamental plants and make them look ugly. Their attractive colors are of artistic value. Of course, they are very colorful in nature, and which usually results in more amount of artistic value. The plasmodia of slime balls are an excellent material for the study of structure and physiology of protoplasm. In the next slide, you can see about euglenoids. These are usually freshwater organisms found in stagnant water. Stagnant water is nothing but the water which is which is stored or which is stopped at one particular place. Instead of cell wall, they have protein-rich layer called as pellicle, which makes their body more flexible, which can move from one place to the other place easily. They have two flagella, one short and one long one. They are photosynthetic in nature and derive, of course, though they are photosynthetic, they can prepare their own food, but sometimes behaves as a heterotrophic by predating on smaller organisms. Like they can be autotrophic in favorable conditions, and during unfavorable conditions, they can be heterotrophic in nature. The pigments of euglenoids are identical to those pigments which are present in higher plants. Example, euglena. In the next slide, you can see the structure of euglena. That is, it contains two flagella. One is very short and the second one is very large in nature. Second one is very short and the first one is very large, which contains stigma, the female gynoecium part. Anterior invaginations are present. Chloroplast is present in the center of the cell. Nucleus at the center. Nucleoids are present inside the nucleus, and pyrenoid is the cell which helps in movement of gases from the body of the cell. So these are the characteristic features of the euglenoids. Next slide, you can see about the protozoa. Protozoas are unicellular organisms. Historically, protozoas are unicellular organisms. Historically, protozoans were called as animal protists as they are heterotrophic and showed animal-like behaviors. They are also parasitic protozoans which live in the cells of larger organisms. Most of the members do not have predefined shape. For instance, an amoeba can change its shape indefinitely, but a paramecium has a definite slipper-like shape, you know. The most well-known examples of protozoans are amoeba, paramecium, and euglena. Unlike other members of this group, euglena is a free-living protozoan that has chlorophyll, which means it can prepare their own food. So you can see that protozoans, depending upon based on their modes of locomotion, they are divided into various other categories. Amoeboids, nothing but which moves with the help of pseudopodia. Flagellated, that is contains flagella. Ciliated, which contains cilia. Sporozoans, that is they don't have any special organs. All these organisms, that is amoeboid, flagellated and ciliated, consist of some special organs, whereas sporozoans does not have any special organs. So in the next slide, you can see the diagrams of all those cells which comes in the category of protozoans. That is, Trichonympha lives in the gut of the intestines. That are the termites, whereas trypanosoma, which causes African sleeping sickness, amoeba, that is entamoeba histolytica, that is present in the which causes amoebic dysentery, and a dinoflagellate, Euglena viridis. All these are the characteristic features of the organisms or diagrams of the organisms. Next, the protozoans are divided into 4 groups we have studied just now about according to their movements, according to their body habits. Amoeboid protozoans are nothing but mostly found in water bodies. Either they are fresh water or saline water. They have contained pseudopodia, that is false feet, which helps to change their shape in capturing and engulfing food. Pseudopodia not only helps in movement but also helps in engulfing food. That is nothing but if you have 2 pseudopodia, like you have got food there, so they will extend their hand, like extend their pseudopodia and capture the food like this and closes its body, which results in capturing of the food with the help of their pseudopodia. Example is amoeba. Flagellated, nothing but they contain flagella, and usually because they contain flagella, they are free living, and as well as free living is nothing but they can prepare their own foods, and some are usually parasitic in nature, which lives on other organisms. Example is Euglena. Ciliated, contains cilia all over their body. Basic example, Paramecium, which is a slipper-like organism. Which, of course, cilia is also helps in locomotion as well as in nutrition, that is engulfing of their food materials. Sporozoans are nothing but organisms behave like a spore-like stage. Like some organisms during their unfavorable conditions, they behave like spore-like stages. That is, they form a spore or cyst form in their unfavorable conditions. Basic example is Plasmodium vivax, that is malarial parasite. I'll give you a basic example. You'll be studying about the malarial parasite in your further chapters in your zoology. What happens is during the sexual reproduction, usually malarial parasite will not have any sexual reproduction in human beings. It only has a sexual reproduction in animal cells. So during the unfavorable condition, it forms a spore-like structure in the human beings, and whereas when it comes in contact with some organism, that is Anopheles mosquito, it again enters into the gut of the mosquito and reproduces, and again when it is furtherly reproduced and new organism is formed, it is again transferred to the human organism by further infection. So these are the organisms. So next you will have the economic importance. In the next slide you can see the economic importance of protists. That is, they serve as the main foundation for the food chain. That is, they are the most important organisms for the aquatic, whereas other aquatic organisms for their food purpose. They are usually symbionts in nature. That is, they depend upon other organisms for their food, and they are beneficial in nature. Also, protists, some of them protists produce oxygen, which is useful in the biofuel, production of biofuel. And also, protists are primary sources of food for many other animals, sea animals of course. In some rare cases, protists are harvested by humans for food and other industrial applications. For further industrial applications, these protists are also a main source. Phytoplankton is one of the sole food sources for whales. Of course, just now I told you that is, these protists are the main organisms which provide much amount of food purpose for the various other aquatic organisms. Seaweed is an algae which is considered as a plant-like protist. Zooplankton is fed on various sea creatures including shrimp and larval crabs. So these are the organisms, and these are the main important features of the animal kingdom Protista, which are very smallest organism of eukarya, which contains membrane bound cell organelles and unicellular. Some are unicellular and some are multicellular, which are further divided into 5 categories, 5 different classes, that is dinoflagellates, chrysophytes, slime moths, and euglenoids. So all these organisms are further divided into various other categories based on their characteristic features, based on their importance, and based on their mode of nutrition. Okay, so with this we'll be completing the kingdom Protista. So for the next kingdom is kingdom fungi. So we'll be studying about the kingdom fungi in our next topic. Thank you.